Welcome to Jenny's Guitar Class. I'm Jenny Carter, and today I'm going to give you some tips on how to choose guitar strings for acoustic guitar. So let's get started. This video is designed more for beginning acoustic guitar players, but any level guitarist may find this information useful. To start, so everyone knows which type of acoustic guitar I am referring to, this is the type of acoustic guitar I am referring to. A standard Dreadnought 6-string acoustic guitar. This video does not cover strings for a classical style guitar or any other guitar than the 6-string acoustic steel string guitar. While there are many brands of acoustic guitar strings, this video will focus more on the string itself. A set of guitar strings will come with all 6 strings from the 1st to the 6th in one package. The first thing you need to know regarding guitar strings is about the different gauges. The gauge refers to the thickness of the string. The most common acoustic guitar string gauges are extra light, light, medium, and heavy. However, you may see gauges listed as custom light, a combination of medium light or medium heavy, and others. The extra light gauge is the thinnest string of the gauges, and of course, heavy is the thickest string of the gauges. If you bend and twist the strings a lot on your acoustic guitar, you may want to opt for an extra light gauge set of strings. This gauge generally starts at .010 and is also known as 10 gauge strings. Extra light gauges, since the string is much thinner than other gauges, will generally have more flexibility, making it much easier to stretch and bend. Another plus to the extra light gauge string is that it causes less pull and stress on the neck and the bridge of the guitar. The downsides of the extra light gauge or 10 gauge strings are that the tone of the string may be higher pitched or a little tinny or trebly sounding without a lot of lower tones being produced. The extra light gauge may also potentially cause fret buzz, meaning the string vibrates against the metal frets, causing a buzzing sound if you have lower action on your guitar. And if you are bending and twisting the strings, you most likely will have lower action, meaning the strings sit closer to the fretboard, or the distance between the string and the fretboard is less. Also, keep in mind that the thinner a string is, the more potential it will have to break during playing. If you are a beginning acoustic guitar player, I recommend a light gauge string. A light gauge string is generally a 12 gauge string. This gauge won't be as hard on your fingers as a heavier gauge will be. It also will be thick enough to handle some of the heavy playing that sometimes comes with learning to play the guitar. However, even seasoned guitar players will use a light gauge string. I still use a light gauge string on my guitars. A medium gauge string is generally a .013 or 13 gauge string. It is heavier or thicker than the light gauge and will have a deeper or mellower tone than the light gauge string. I have seen a lot of players in the bluegrass realm use this gauge of string. The downside to the medium gauge or 13 gauge strings is that they are harder to press, and if you haven't built up the calluses on your fingertips, this can be very rough on delicate skin. The heavy gauge string generally is a .014 gauge or 14 gauge string. This gauge would have a thicker, more bassier tone. The downside is that it would be harder to play and rougher on your fingers just because of the thickness of the string. There wouldn't be much flexibility in the heavy gauge string. There is one precaution I would like to mention regarding heavy gauge strings. I would advise checking with the manufacturer of your guitar before installing this gauge of string on your guitar as to whether or not using a heavy gauge or 14 gauge string would void your guitar warranty. As a former music store owner, some of our manufacturers would not warranty a Dreadnought guitar that had this gauge of strings on them. The heavy or 14 gauge strings would cause a lot of tension on the neck and the bridge, and over time could potentially cause the bridge to pull up or pull off completely and or cause the neck to bow. I would not recommend using a heavy gauge string on a standard Dreadnought acoustic guitar. Now that we've covered gauges, let's cover the most common types of strings. I will talk about two of the most common, but there are others. The first is the bronze string. This is probably the most common type of guitar string. The bronze string has a bright tone and rings out well when new. It may be listed on the guitar string pack as 80-20 bronze, which means it is 80% copper and 20% tin, which makes the end result bronze. As far as a guitar string goes, bronze strings are relatively inexpensive. The downside is they tend to wear out faster. A couple of tips for making your guitar strings last longer is to always make sure your hands are clean and dry before you begin practicing or playing your guitar. When you are finished playing, take a dry cotton cloth, like an old t-shirt, and wipe down the strings after you finish playing your guitar. Wipe the top of the strings as well as underneath the strings. Another common type of guitar string is the phosphor bronze. The phosphor bronze string has a much warmer tone and has less brightness than the bronze string. It is made of 85% copper and 15% tin. Some strings come with a coating on them and are called coated strings. The coating on the strings helps them last longer than non-coated strings. The upside is that you don't have to change strings as often. The downside is that they are pricier than non-coated strings. A few more tips about guitar strings. First, guitar strings can oxidize over time, even without your playing them. Oxygen reacting with the metal in guitar strings causes them to oxidize. If you see your guitar strings turning brown or black looking or looking rusted, this is most likely caused by oxidation. Second, I recommend changing your guitar strings at least once a month if you play regularly. If you play in a band, you may want to change them once a week to keep them in tip-top shape. And third, over time as you play your guitar, the strings will become discolored and dull looking from use. Sweat and grime from your hands will wear out your strings, and this is normal. This can cause your strings to not stay in tune like they should. For example, if you can tune your guitar and one chord is in tune, but when you change to another chord, it sounds out of tune, and it is not related to human error, you should change your guitar strings as soon as possible because they are worn out. There is so much more about guitar strings you can learn. We've just touched the surface in this video. But this video should have given you enough information so that you can determine which guitar strings you should use for your level of playing and for the type of sound you are looking for. I hope you enjoyed and learned something from this video. If you'd like to see more of Jenny's Guitar Class videos, please like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.